and receive $10 per room off, up to $50. You can call me at 970-405-3740 or email me at nococarpetcleaning@gmail.com. Don't forget to check out my reviews on Google.
Hey, Chris Lewis here with My Favorite Gunsmith at myfavoritegunsmith.com, 970-776-0258. At My Favorite Gunsmith, all I do is repair firearms. I love freedom more than guns, but the only thing that separates a free man from a slave is firearm ownership. I would only add that it needs to work. All of my guns work. Do yours? Find out. 970-776-0258. My Favorite Gunsmith at myfavoritegunsmith.com. That's 970-776-0258.
You're listening to the Roar of the Rockies, KHNC, 1360 AM, Johnstown, Greeley, Loveland, Fort Collins.
Francis Chick Powers.
With an inside story behind a Christmas song.
You better watch out. You better not cry.
Those familiar words from Santa Claus is Coming to Town were first written on the reverse side of an envelope in 1934 by Mr. Haven Gillespie. He was on the BMT train line in New York City when he wrote it. The melody was put to it by Mr. J. Fred Coots. Mr. Haven Gillespie Jr. now presents his father's account.
In 1934, it was October the 15th, Mr. Bittner, who was then the manager of Leo Feiss Music Publishing, phoned my father at his home in Kentucky and asked him if he wouldn't come to New York, talk over the possibility of writing a Christmas song for children. My father was a little reluctant, but Mr. Bittner persevered, and my father did go to New York. So, the same day, my father and his writing partner, Fred Coots, had left Bittner's office and were on the BMT, probably going to Coots' home. My father took out a letter that he had received from my mother, and on the reverse side of the envelope wrote the lyrics to Santa Claus is Coming to Town. Mr. Coots put the melody to it. Mr. Coots contacted Eddie Cantor, and although Cantor was a little reluctant to go on the air with the children's song, his wife thought it was great. The first year, in 1934, it had broken all records for sheet music sales for Feist.
From the Christmas files of the musicalsoundreview.com, I'm Francis Chick Powers.
Santa Claus is coming to town.
This is Steve at Ramsey Auto Group.
Hey, this is Mike from Ramsey Auto Group.
Just stopping in to say hi, let you know that we're still open, still in business, and still rocking and rolling.
You know, if you're looking for a good car experience, come see us. We have old school values. We still operate by handshake. We're not pushy. We want you to be happy. And we have a great selection of trucks. 6175 West 10th Street, Greeley.
970-443-5654.
970-443-5654.
Are you looking to sell your access construction equipment? Trust Steffes Group's team of professionals to get you the best return on your investment. Steffes Group is a nationally recognized leader in the auction business with over 60 years of experience. Their team of professionals prioritize honesty, integrity, and outstanding service, and they work with you every step of the way to ensure a smooth and successful auction process. Go to steffesgroup.com right now to find a sales representative near you and discuss your options today.
The views and opinions expressed on 1360 KHNC are entirely those of the host, guests, and callers and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Excursion Broadcasting Network.
It's time for the Deaf Blind Potter Show with your host, Kelvin Crosby.
Why you ever chose me has always been a mystery. All my life I've been told I belong at the end of the line with all the other not quite. With all that never get it right. But it turns out they're the ones you were looking for all this time. 'Cause I'm just a nobody, trying to tell everybody.
Hey, it's so good to see you, even though I can't see you. It's another beautiful day in the neighborhood, and I'm so excited that you are here at the Deaf Blind Potter Show on KHNC 1360 on the AM dial. And I'm so excited today. We're going to be talking about my story a little bit, and I got a special guest who has been mentoring me for, I want to say it's been 25 years. That's crazy. And what I'm excited about showing to you is I'm excited to be able to take you on this journey with me and kind of what's been going through my life the last couple months as well. Kind of where have I struggled in areas where depression was starting to seep into my life, and how did I overcome those challenges? And I have my mentor here, Chaplain Paul. Chaplain, welcome to the Deafblind Potter Show.
Oh, I've been looking forward to this time, Kelvin.
And I mean, you're also my uncle, and you've been. I'll never forget the day where I reached out to you. I said, "Hey, Uncle Paul, I need accountability. I need a mentor in my life." And do you remember that day?
Oh, I do, and I remember some of the reasons behind it, and you'll get into that in just a little bit. But yes, very much so.
And for me, when the day that I asked you that question, I knew in my life at that point I needed to make a change, because I had just lost more sports in my life. I had just lost soccer. I had just lost actually playing football, and I needed to do something, and I needed to grow more in my relationship with Christ to overcome this season in my life. But what I didn't realize, the importance of having a mentor to deal with certain areas in your life of depression. And for me, I wouldn't necessarily say I've ever been clinically depressed. And I do want to be very clear that I am not a doctor about what we're going to talk about. I'm not an expert. We're just talking about life experiences today. And we're talking about how my life in dealing with my challenges and having my mentor, my Uncle Paul, here, and how we work together to overcome the challenges that I have faced. Because I think it's important that you know, as the listener, that you understand how I've dealt with things, so that way you can also work through your own challenges. Because for me, I've been able to use my Uncle Paul and use other like pottery, and we'll get into a lot of those conversations today, and how I was able to, when those times where that dark plate comes, how do I pull out of those situations? So Uncle Paul, why do people call you Chaplain Paul? Why don't we start there, and then we'll get into the rest of the part today.
Sure, Kelvin. For 30 years, I pastored local churches, and I came to a place in my life where I was asked to make a change out of pastoral ministry into helping a Christian businessman start an internet service provider company. And so I did that. I had a little bit of experience in relationship to computers. Many pastors are bivocational, and I was pastoring a small church. I had a small computer repair business where I finally realized that people were paying money for the knowledge that I had. So along the line, I was given this opportunity. But it wasn't the end of the road. I did help in that situation to get something launched, but I needed to be in that particular location because I was challenged to be a healthcare chaplain.
Yep.
Began my training, my clinical training, to become a certified, board-certified chaplain. Ended up eventually in San Diego, where you lived, and lived with you, if you remember, for 9 months.
I'll never forget that season. I'll never forget. I was 13 years old, and I was 13. I was either 13 or 14, and I was in 8th grade. And I'll never forget. I lied to my parents about taking steroids because I was fairly big for my size, and this is when we just learned that I had Usher syndrome type 2, and I was not accepting any of this. And I was like, this isn't going to be what we're going to be having today. I ain't going to deal with my blindness. I ain't going to deal with any of this. I'm going to chase all the girls in the world, and I'm going to use my hot, sexy body to do that. And I'll never forget when my parents, I was bragging I was taking steroids, but I wasn't really doing that. But I remember coming into your room, and you were living in my parents' house, and obviously I was there too. And you and I having, essentially, I would say that was the first time you mentored me and had to deal with this lie that I created that I couldn't get myself out of.
Yeah, I can't remember that particular story, but I remember that was kind of the direction your life was going, trying to deal with all of these changes and losses, and they were losses.
Yeah.
And so eventually that did lead to deep depression for you.
Yeah. So with that, I mean, so in the story, you gave me some counsel, say, hey, just go to your parents, confess that you've lied about it, and deal with it. So that's the end of that story. And so moving on. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with some older stories, and then we're going to go into newer stories. And when we go through this journey today, we're going to provide you some really cool tools to help you do a self-assessment if you're struggling with depression. As well, we're going to be kind of helping you learn how to get out of that dark space. Again, we're not medical experts, but we are taking my life experiences and seeing how do we navigate this space where, hey, I'm in this dark spot. How do you move forward so it doesn't become a medical situation? Or if it becomes a medical situation, what do you need to do to get help? So first story, we're going to start off. We're going to go when I was 19 years old, when everything was starting to change pretty dramatic for me. I was going from basically able to drive a car, became legally blind, and I remember being at Hume Lake Christian Camp in California, and I was up there and doing my Bible school and doing everything I needed to do, and my vision just started failing fast. I didn't know what I was going to do with that. I didn't know how I was going to handle all of that. And I remember you coming up to Hume Lake, and you saw me, and you're like, Calvin, how you doing? And honestly, I didn't tell you the truth, because I didn't want to have to face the reality that deaf blindness was really eating me alive. But you asked me some key questions, like how. So, if you were mentoring somebody, what would be some questions if you knew somebody was struggling with struggling with a major difference in their life? And I mean, you knew that I was legally blind at that point. And what would be some questions that you would ask as a chaplain to somebody, hey, to bring awareness, hey, you might be struggling with some depression, and what would be some questions you would ask?
Yeah, that's very common for people to have, losses in their life, and I'll say it that way again. At the time, I was a healthcare chaplain. I was actually chaplain at Polinsky Children's Center, a home for abused and molested children.
Yeah.
And we'll tell that story in just a minute.
So stay tuned, and we're going to finish the story and how God pulled me out of this part of my life. So stay tuned. We'll see you on the other side.
All of your electronic devices can be severely damaged by lightning bolts and power surges. Even worse, an EMP attack can destroy everything, leaving our technology-dependent society with no technology. But don't let that be you. Go to EMPShield.com and put KHNC in the promo code box. EMP Shield is an electromagnetic pulse, solar flare, and lightning protection system made to protect you and your electronics. Again, go to EMPShield.com and type KHNC in the promo code box. EMPShield.com.
As 1360 continues to grow, we want to know what our listeners think. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like. Give us your feedback. Go to 1360khnc.com and hit the contact button and give us your thoughts.
This is Tammy with Naturally Inspired Health Network. We created a group with real solutions for healthy living. Providers with products and services we trust. Need pain relief? Christy Sullivan, Vitality for Life. Want acupuncture? Debbie Ireland, Touch of the East. Looking for a medical doctor? Dr. Sharon Montez, Living Well Health Group. Solutions for health insurance? Wendy Scipione, MPB Health. NaturallyInspiredHealthNetwork.com. Connecting people with real solutions for health.
And trembles at his voice, trembles at his voice. How great is our God? Sing with me, how great is our God? And oh, we'll see how great is our God.
Hey, so good to see you, even though I can't see you, with another beautiful day in the neighborhood, and I'm so excited that you are here at the Deaf Blind Potter Show. My name is Kelvin Crosby, also known as the Deaf Blind Potter. You're listening to KHNC 1360 on the AM dial, and today we're talking about depression, and we're taking my story, and I got my mentor, Chaplain Paul, also my Uncle Paul. So if you hear me say, hey, Uncle Paul, what do you think about that? Then you know the correlation to that. So the other thing, so today what we're focusing on is the key story. So let me just set the scene. If you know my story, you know that I struggled with suicide when I was 19 years old. And you know that I really was struggling with this. And trying to figure out how was I going to live with deaf blindness, which kind of set me into this really dark spot. So in this case, Chaplain Paul, my Uncle Paul, came up to Hume Christian Camp where I was going to school, and he asked some key questions, seeing how I was doing, and that's where we're going to pick up. So basically, the last question I asked before we went to the commercial was, if you were going to talk to somebody and you're probably knowing they're going through something pretty difficult, what would you ask them and what would you say to them, Uncle Paul?
Well, first of all, as a chaplain, my role is not necessarily to impose my beliefs on another person, but to draw out of them what is inside of them already, their faith perspective on life. And I knew that you wanted to serve Christ. I knew that your intention was to be a strong Christian, and so I just asked some questions built upon that in relationship to this big loss that you were dealing with. And basically my question for anyone would, how are you coping with what is going on? What are you drawing from for strength? What is it that you're turning to that will help you find some answers to this challenge in your life?
I mean, I think at this point in my life, I mean, we were getting prepared to hike 200 miles in Israel, so I was dealing with that. I was dealing with learning how to hike with a cane, blind cane, and I was learning how to do all these things. But there was a key part to this. I wasn't willing to deal with the true pain of having to. So that was the part where, for me, when you came up, I was like, all right, how was I going to deal with this?
You ever heard the term honest to God? People say it all the time. Honest to God, Kelvin.
Yep.
Well, so many times we aren't honest with God.
Yeah.
But not only that, we're not honest with ourselves.
Yeah.
And we know that when it comes to sin, we need to confess our sins, and we are promised the forgiveness of God. But in some of these areas of dealing with a loss, we need to face it head on. And there are several things that are crucial here, Kelvin. First of all, you need to rule out, is this a clinical situation usually caused by a chemical imbalance? That's another side of depression and finding some resources for it. But I think for you were just depressed.
Yeah, and I think that was the key thing is there are the key component, and I think this is a good time to kind of go through how do we assess where we're at, because all of us need to evaluate and figure out how we're going to get out of this situation. Because in this time of my life, Romans 5:3-4 was the key verse in my life, and that was, I'm going to rejoice in my suffering, I'm going to persevere, and with perseverance I'm going to build a character for Christ that has hope. But because of this, I really struggled being able to navigate that verse, really navigate that pain. And I'll never forget some conversations that you and I had after I came down from the mountain and accepting that deaf blindness is going to be what God has called me to do. And then having to battle with more things. And you and I talked about it, like things about being a man. Because, yes, I was accepting deaf blindness, but I wasn't necessarily, and I was having joy. But the struggle of deaf blindness was really starting to creep into my life. And I'll never forget, like, that loneliness and that starting to get into that dark space, and what led me to getting addicted to pornography. And I remember, like, you and I having this conversation where you and I are sitting, I remember being at Starbucks, we were having this conversation, how do I get out of this? Because I want to be a godly man, but I'm now taking my legally blind eye, meaning I can still see clear in the center of my vision, and I've infected my vision with all these dirty videos and all this stuff. And you were there, and you kept helping me through this journey.
Well, for one thing, Kelvin, pornography is such a huge problem, and it's infected so much, so many in my world, and it's something that is common. I mean, it's normal too. You know, we are men. That doesn't excuse it, because we can't be the true men of God that we ought to be while we're playing games with God in regards to this. But yes, and that's a part of dealing with depression, is being honest with ourselves that sin is sin, and we're not going to have any part of it. We're going to live at a higher plane. We need to accept the optimism of grace.
Yeah. Well, I think that was what I remember you saying, Kelvin. You got to put yourselves in positions so that way you don't stumble. I'll never forget some of the things that you taught me. I mean, I was 13 years old, and you had the computer in your room, but you had a picture of your wife, and you had the screen facing the door, and you left the door open. Those are all little small details that you did to handle that. And then if loneliness set in, or you're thinking about whatever, you're like, you get up and walk away.
I actually learned that from the Seattle Police Department. Had a speaker one time at a session that I attended who mentioned that pornography is something that is done and enjoyed in solitude.
Yeah.
And you need to be out front with people where they can see you. I wanted, when I was at my own home, I wanted my children to see what was on the screen at any time. And wanted my wife to have confidence in the fact that what was on the screen was available for her to see, and that I wasn't hiding anything.
Yeah. So why are we talking about this stuff? I mean, why am I being this vulnerable to all of you? Well, part of it is if I'm not vulnerable to you, you're not going to live beyond your challenges. So if I'm telling you, as a deafblind person, that I struggled with this, then most of you that are listening have some vision. And most of you have some hearing. And if I can struggle with it, you can struggle with it. Because when we deal with this stuff, if we deal with this stuff, it helps us not to go deep into depression. And I think some key things that we need to also address here is when things like this, if we don't put in place tricks and tips or tricks and actions to overcome loneliness, solitude situations, different things like that. Because every single time I've stumbled, when I suicide, with pornography, and those are the two major things for me. Every time I've struggled with that stuff, it was in solitude. I distanced myself away from the people that were going to help me be healthy. I distanced myself away from my church. I mean, what's crazy is the time that I was dealing with pornography is I was dating my wife, or not dating my wife yet, but I had distanced myself from her because she was helping me get to church and do different things. And before we were dating, and then I just literally fell off the planet Earth, and nobody saw me for a good 9 months. And when I came back, she was like, "Where you been?" Well, I sure wasn't going to confess to a girl at church that I was struggling with this stuff. But I eventually just let it right open. I let her know exactly where I was at. And today, it's something that we have wide open in our marriage. Even though I can't see deadly squat now, it's still a struggle.
You have your imagination.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, that's a basic tenet of pornography, is to let your mind run wild as to possibilities. And it's really nothing more than print on a page or a figure on a screen.
Yeah.
And yet our minds can take us to the darkest places in relationship to what God intended for us to be holy men, live in purity.
Yep. So I want to encourage you, the listener. I want to encourage you today. Is something in your life that causing you to be addicted to it? So let's list a couple of things: food, drugs, marijuana, drinking, girls, men, the news, negative news, social media. These are all things that can trigger the beginning stages of depression.
Not only that, Kelvin, in addition to that, and we're going to have to wrap up this part of it, but just today, all the phone calls I have had to deal with today have been, pretty deep and troublesome aspects of illness.
Mm-hmm.
Cancer, melanoma. Just got word of a young lady who had just given birth last week. They had taken her to the hospital because of a racing heart and not sure what was happening. And so on and on, all around us, there's bad news. Let's just face it. And our health is, of course, a key component of how we respond in our thinking to life and to God. And we haven't ever mentioned this, but a lot of what we're talking about is that we are angry with God about something.
Yep. And that's such a big, big deal. Because I know when suicide came into my life when I was 19, and then the same thing with porn, I was angry with God. Because in one case, deaf blindness was what I was angry about. In the other case, I wanted to be married. I wanted a wife. I wanted that. And those two things really started to creep in on me. And I was like, whatever. I'm just going to go for it, run for it, and just take off.
You know, Kelvin, I do want to say right now, if anybody's listening who's really going through some dark thinking, that you need to tell someone, and there is help all around. And we'll get to this a little bit later, but I would hope that anyone listening right now who's going through some difficulty or some bad news that's come into your world somehow, some way, to find help, to find someone you can talk to. There are hotlines, helplines that you can call, suicide prevention organizations, counselors, pastors. So it's good to talk to people just about depression and feelings that you're going through.
Yeah. So when we come back, we're gonna go through the self-assessment of depression, and when we come back, we're gonna go through that, and then we're gonna then go through the stages of how do we get out of this. So we'll see you on the other side.
Hi folks, Joe Jaquin here from the Half Empty Cup of Joe show. Are you worried about investing in the stock market, especially with Joe Biden in office? Do you really trust this economy? What if you could invest in a secure, collateralized portfolio with a high fixed rate of return that's not correlated to the stock market or the Fed? A portfolio where you know what each monthly statement will look like with no surprises. Your interest is compounded daily, you're paid monthly, and there are no fees. You can turn your income on or off, compound it, whatever you choose. And get this, there's absolutely no loss of principal if you ever need your money back. Go to investyrefi.com. That's invest, the letter Y, REFY.com, or call 888-YREFI24. You can earn a fixed rate of return that's up to 10.25%. Just call 888-YREFI24 or go to investyrefi.com and tell them Joe sent you.
It's a perfect time to plant trees during the Tree Farm's 50-cent tree sale. Buy the first tree at regular price and get a second tree for only 50 cents. Choose from thousands of carry-out size shade trees, flowering trees, evergreen trees, and more. Buy one 7 to 8 foot tall flowering tree for only $269.50 and get another tree for only 50 cents. That's 2 7-gallon trees for only $2.70.
You
Come
take
see.
I-25 to exit 235, then 5 miles west to the Tree Farm.
Do you have questions or comments for Kelvin? You can text him right now at 877-536-1360.
And it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul.
Hey, it's so good to see you, even though I can't see you. It's another beautiful day in the neighborhood. My name is Kelvin Crosby, also known as the Deafblind Potter, and you're listening to KHNC 1360 on the AM dial. And today we're talking about a topic that is, for some people, pretty taboo. And honestly, this is the first time I've kind of am talking about it in this format related to my story. Because we're talking about depression. In my life, there are some 3 areas that were really crucial. One when I was 8 years old, and you're going to have to listen to the Christmas Day episode to get that story. But for we already talked about when I was 19, and we already talked about when I struggled with pornography, and when I was, I think it was 21. I forget exactly the years on that. But when everything started kind of coming for me, I was really having to think, how are they going to live beyond these challenges? So what we're going to do now is I'm going to have Chapman Paul, aka my uncle, we're going to do a self-assessment of my struggle with pornography. not pornography. We're so many different topics today. If I'm struggling with depression, what I'm going to do is on the website at Deafblind Potter Show, you're going to be able to get this on here. You can get this, and then if you want this to be a magnet on your door or on your refrigerator or something, you can ask this to people. You can talk to. You can do this for yourself as well. If you make this part of your conversation and make this a normal conversation in your life, you can use these key questions that we're going to work through, and I'm going to assess myself on my depression level, and this way you can, as an individual, if you have a loved one that's struggling with depression and you want to say, I really want to make sure that they're scoring not too high, and they're scoring low, and then if they score low, then I'll say that we're okay. But if they're scoring high, you can start helping them work through that process. So I'm going to let Paul go ahead and take it over from here. So let's go with the first one.
And remember, Kelvin, we're talking about those who are feeling depressed, and we are not clinicians or doctors, medical people. We're just asking these questions and addressing these factors to create an alertness in people regarding the possibility that they need to seek help. For the first thing I'm going to ask you, Kelvin, how are you sleeping?
Well, I'm sleeping better. There was a little bit of a season this last 2 months that I wasn't sleeping the greatest.
Okay. How about interests? Do you have interests that are alive?
Well, I enjoy putting this radio show to go on. I love doing pottery, and I love being able to just encourage other people. So those, I guess, were my key main interests that I'd like to do. And listen to podcasts.
Oh, good. How about guilt? Do you have any feelings of guilt?
Honestly, there is some. I feel like I'm wrapping up this year with the CME cane not being where it should be. If you're not familiar with the CME cane, it's an invention that I made, and it's a lighter blind cane that you can see from 100 yards away. And I was hoping by this point that the CME cane would have had raised a lot more money than what we had, and that it will, coming into this next year, we'll be launching the new version of the CME cane. And that's not going to happen.
Yeah, and that's a disappointment with a happening in your life that has nothing to do with a violation of your moral code. No. And, so the feelings of guilt that oftentimes we need to deal with have to do more with the violation of our own moral code. How about energy? How is your energy these days?
Well, I would say my energy is it's pretty decent. Like I can go for a whole day and do just fine, and so I think I'm all okay on that end.
How about this one? Your ability to concentrate. How's your focus?
That's a little bit of a challenge. Like there are days where I walk into my office, and I'm like, I can't put two pieces together. I mean that's kind of been the struggle for the last 2 months. And I think that's why where I'm at today is the last 2 months trying to put everything together for this radio show, put things together for the CME cane, get things moving in regards to production on the pottery, all those things. It has not been easy.
Well, in relationship to that, maybe we can find some questions that help us identify what's going on there. But a big one is eating patterns, appetite, but not just appetite, but how much you eat, how little you eat. Is it healthy eating?
Yeah. Well, I would say there are days that are better than others. I do eat a normal 3 meals a day, but there are some days that I maybe eat way too much. And
you and I have talked about this, that in the new year we both want to get serious about our weight and just that whole aspect of eating and taking care of our bodies, the intake that we have, and so that's crucial right there. There's a lot of studies that reveal that what we take in can impact our thinking, create foggy thinking, brain fog is what they call it.
Yep.
So that's important. Let me get my piece of paper here. I've got these other things on the other side of my paper. Let me turn it over because I'm at appetite and I need to go to the next one. So let me see. Yeah. Well, we'll go on with all of these that hope you got those. But those are some indicators there of where you are in your own thinking and dealing with, and I'd add one more. How have you been feeling health-wise, just overall your health, energy level?
Well, I think there's some other key questions, and this is one that I think needs to be asked. Have you had thoughts of suicide? And this is one that if somebody would have asked me this when I was 19 years old, I would have probably, I don't know. I don't know what I would have said, but if you asked the question, how often, then I probably would have said at least 3 or 4 times a week. And for me, putting that in the open, saying it, then having to deal with it, I mean, for me...
Yeah, if that's true in someone's life, that they give indications that they're thinking in this vein of suicide, getting them to talk about it, and especially finding out if they have a plan.
Yeah.
That's crucial.
Yeah.
Now, we've asked all these questions. How's the score? How are we going to score this?
Well, I mean, I think for me, I'm scoring like a 2, so that's good. If you're more than 4, then we need to start addressing some of this stuff.
I can remember when my wife, and hers was in this part of her testimony, when she had clinical depression. It really was more than just feelings. And her medical doctor just told her that even Christians can suffer from depression.
Yep.
And it was a clinical situation where she had to deal with some things from a physical side, but also to deal with some losses in her life that had never been exposed to thinking things through.
Yep. So stay tuned, because now what we're going to do, when we come back, we're going to work on techniques to overcome some of these depression. We're not solving the medical side, but we're solving things before it becomes too bad. So stay tuned. We'll see you on the other side.
Blade Stop, clinically proven and FDA cleared to stop even arterial bleeds. Pour it into the wound, apply direct pressure, and clotting occurs in seconds. No stinging or burning. Minor cuts or major wounds, Bleed Stop is a must for first aid kits, backpacks, and trauma bags. Find Bleed Stop by clicking on the Bleed Stop button on the 1360 KHNC webpage. Products and prices listed on the KHNC website are 20% off the regular Bleed Stop website prices. Get yours today.
Are you as ticked off at Roly Polis and the Dems as I am? Join us Wednesday at 5 p.m. when we'll be joined by Tabor Law author Doug Bruce. Wednesday at 5 p.m. right here on AM 1360.
The Blue Dragon Spa is a man-friendly spa, with women bringing their husbands and significant others in for pedicures all the time. Men's feet hurt too, don't forget. Blue Dragon Spa, 1811 Hover Street, Suites A and B, Longmont, Colorado, 720-680-0492, 720-680-0492.
If you're not listening to Swamp Fight, you're just not listening. Join us here in the swamp Wednesdays at 5 p.m. and Saturdays and Sundays at 12 noon right here on AM 1360.
Miracle worker, promise keep, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are here, touching every heart. I worship you, I worship
Hey, so good to see you, even though I can't see you. It's another beautiful day in the neighborhood. My name is Kelvin Crosby, also known as the Deafblind Potter. You're listening to the Deafblind Potter Show, and on the KHNC 1360. And today we're talking about a tough topic, and I'm being very vulnerable to all of you. But if I'm vulnerable to you, it allows you to live beyond your challenges. Because that's what the motto is here at Deafblind Potter. We live beyond our challenges. Whether it's struggling with cancer, whether it's struggling with a loss of a loved one. I just heard of one of my partners I'm working with on my product. His son just died, and he was literally 7 years old. I'm like, I can't imagine that pain. And so those are all things that the Deafblind Potter Show is all about. So if you want to continue to learn more and grow more in your living beyond your challenges, this is the place to be. And you can get all the episodes that we do here every Monday at 5 o'clock Mountain Standard Time at deafblindpottershow.com. And that gets you all the links that we'll do. Like today's show, you'll have the card that you can get to do self-assessment of depression. You'll be able to get the video of it. You can also get the podcast, all of that. And by the way, if you are a podcast listener, the Deafblind Potter Show is on the Apple Podcast player. So go ahead and download it there. Subscribe so you don't miss an episode. As well, you can if you can do a 5-star, it helps us rank in the charts on that too. That'd be great. So today, what we're talking about is depression, and I've talked about my suicide stuff when I was 19. I talked about my pornography issues when I was, I think, 21 years old, and we talked about doing a self-assessment of depression, and we talked about that challenge. And I scaled probably about 2 with my scoring on that. And I'm doing this all with my Uncle Paul, also known as Chaplain Paul. And him and I are going through this. So now what we're going to do, kind of leading us to the end of this show, is we're going to look at things to help us overcome depression. Because and again, we are not medical experts, and we are not medical professionals. We're just using my life experiences, and my uncle being my mentor for over 25 years of my life, and we're bringing you some key things how you can start working through your challenges, because that's what we are here to do at the Deafblind Potter Show. So the first thing that we're going to talk about overcoming our challenges of depression is what, Uncle Paul?
Well, the first thing we want to do is ask the question, am I spending time with God?
And I think this is a key thing. See, when I changed everything from that loneliness, that frustration, all of that, when it went deep, when it became more than a religion, it became a relationship, I tell you that changed everything. And relationships take work. And it takes time, and it takes nurturing, and it takes practice, and figuring out what works best for you. I mean, for me, when I struggled with all of the depression stuff I went through, my relationship with God was more of a religion. It wasn't a relationship. And when I changed that from a religion to a relationship, it really transformed my life.
Yeah, the next thing we need to take a look at is, are you being honest with yourself and with others and with God?
And that's huge, because when you're honest, you are addressing the key part of saying, all right, I can overcome. Because if we are not honest, and there were times where when I was struggling, I was not honest, and what led me to get darker and darker and darker. And this is what I want to encourage you today. You got to be honest with yourself. If you're not honest with yourself, then how are you going to be honest with somebody else? So that way you can live beyond the challenge.
Next thing we're going to take a look at, Kelvin, is social media, and this is so crucial. Studies are revealing more and more that people who are involved deeply in social media, even when we think it might be good, social media has everything to do with how you feel about yourself, whether you might be maybe you're being bullied in some way. Perhaps you've gotten into some areas that are just not good for you.
Yep. Well, and I think the other key component for this was, for me, not necessarily for me, but the other thing is comparing yourself. So a lot of what people put on social media is the goody-goody stuff, not the bad. And so then you're comparing to somebody that has a great life because they edited it and made it pretty and fancy. And that will lead you through that process as well.
Well, that leads me to say that you need to reconnect. Notice the choice of that word, reconnect with your healthy friends.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about physical health or spiritual health.
And I think this is the key part. Like, I never will forget the transformation that changed in my life because when I got addicted to pornography, I separated myself from the church, from the people that were able to help me come out, and I pulled away. And then next thing you know, when I poured back in, things started to get easier. Actually, it's never really easier. It became more manageable to be able to overcome.
Well, that leads us to the next one, which falls right into place here. You have to disconnect from unhealthy friends, and you just need to cut some of those relationships off.
Yep. Well, and that's been something that is, who do you have in your life that's going to help you live beyond your challenge? So when we come back, we're going to finish the questionnaire and we'll wrap up the show and we'll continue to live beyond our challenge. So see you on the other side.
Hi everybody, Glenn Tate, co-host of Prepping 2.0.
Shelby Gallagher here. Join us Saturdays at 9 a.m.
right here on 1360 KHNC.
where we bring you great ideas to take your preps to the next level.
You've probably been hearing me talk about Why Refi for a while now. Why Refi has been getting a ton of phone calls, and I want to thank you for supporting and investing in something that actually helps people. A lot of people are talking about this investment, so I'd like to review the basics with you. First off, yes, it's true. You can earn up to 10.25% fixed rate of return that's not correlated to the stock market or the Fed. You can turn your income on or off, compound it, whatever you choose, and there are absolutely no fees. There is no attack on principal if you ever need your money back, and your monthly statements will have no surprises. If you're not sure if you can trust this economy, this secure collateralized portfolio may be a good option for you. Just go to investyrefi.com. That's the word invest, the letter Y, REFY.com, or call them at 888-YREFI24. That's 888-YREFI24. Tell them Joe sent you.
Do you have questions or comments for Kelvin? You can text him right now at 877-536-1360.
I want to see you high and lifted up, shining in the light of your glory. Pour out your power and love as we sing, holy, holy, holy. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord.
Hey, so good to see you, even though I can't see you. And my name is Kelvin Crosby, also known as the Deafblind Potter. You're listening to the Deafblind Potter Show and on the KHNC 1360 on the AM dial. And so we're going to jump right into this because this is the last segment of our show. So I'm going to have Uncle Paul go ahead and take it away with the next question.
Okay, we've come through this relationship aspect. Now we're going to talk about some of the things that we might be doing, like taking a depressant, or like drinking, taking drugs of any kind, overeating.
Yep. So in this case, like for me, like this last segment, this last 2 weeks, like these 2 months for me, like I was starting to realize that I was eating a lot, and I was also just working a ton. Like I was using work as a getaway, and it wasn't good. And so this is something that we got to address in our own lives. So
the next one we're gonna, we're doing it right now, but you need to take a depressant inventory. I think that word depressant, is that what you meant, or did you mean depression?
Depression.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, and for everybody, you can get that at the deafblindpottershow.com, and there'll be a sticker for you. If you want to go and purchase a sticker, it'll help the Deafblind Potter a little bit, but not a ton. But that way, you have the sticker, you have or you can get a magnet. I'll see if I can get you guys a magnet for it, or even just a card. So that way you can have this readily available. If you need to talk to your kids about this, you need to talk to your grandkids, or yourself, or a coworker. You just have a simple conversation. Don't be blunt about it. Just weave it into a conversation so that way they can overcome their challenge.
And then we have to go to our Heavenly Father and establish our value from His perspective.
Yeah. And this is so crucial. See, as a deafblind individual, my life should be pretty horrible. But because God gave me a value, He molded me, He shaped me just as who I am. I can live a life to change the world in His eyes. And that's what He's doing. And I am living a life saying, hey, I'm going to live beyond my deafblindness. And God molded me in that way.
You know, Scripture helps us here, Kelvin. Talking about God's perspective, the Word of God is God's expressed Word full of promises. I've talked about the optimism of grace, but God knows us. He sees us. Psalm 139. Just write this down if you're listening. But the Scripture is very clear that the Apostle Paul will later share some crucial verses. But in Psalm 139, we read where he says, "You know where I sit and when I rise. You understand my thoughts from afar. You search out my path and my lying down. You're aware of my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, you know all about it, O Lord." This is so crucial for us to realize that. And that leads us to Ephesians 2:10 in the New Testament, where Paul says this, "Where God's workmanship created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance as our way of life."
Yep.
So God has made some great promises to us.
Yeah. So all these tools for you to go live beyond your challenge and to look at depression and say, how do I live beyond this? Obviously, if you score more than three or four on the depression scale, we need to go get medical support. So let's go and do this. Let's overcome our challenges, and I will see you next week, because I got Leah Faulkner coming again, and we're going to be talking about her new movie. So, see you next week.
Hi, this is Ron Tafoya, owner and operator of New Method Cleaner.